Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Police Training Inside Out. My name is Norman Conti. What I'm going to do today is I'll introduce myself and tell you a little bit about what we're trying to do here in Pittsburgh, and then I'll turn it over to my two partners, and they can tell you about themselves and what they're doing along, what we're all doing together, and how they see it playing out. So I've been interested in policing my whole life. As a young person, I really wanted to be some sort of police officer. I went to college in the midst of the Rodney King beating and trial, and that very much informed the way I looked at things. I majored in criminal justice, or it was actually administration of justice, and I double majored in sociology. I went to graduate school in sociology to get my PhD. Along the way, when it was time to do my dissertation, I decided I wanted to do something about police. And initially, I wanted to do homicide detectives and the jokes they tell because I had done an internship for a month with a homicide unit here in Allegheny County, and the jokes were just relentless and horrifying, much like the job. So I did a month with the homicide unit in Cleveland, and they threw me out because they had a new lieutenant, and he didn't want to have his unit be the subject of a dissertation on his first whatever, how just starting to work there. Along the way, I met the lieutenant in charge of the police academy, and his father had been an English professor at Kent State, so he was super excited and said, "Why don't you come up and do a dissertation on my unit?" So that was a big difference, getting kicked out of one and welcome into the other. But I had been walking through the training academy in Cleveland one time with an old homicide cop, and the recruits posted up against the wall and stood at attention as we walked by. And he looked at me and said, "Kid, around here these people are lower than whale shit." So I was like, "Well, I don't want to spend a year with these lower than whale shit people. I'm trying to work with homicide detectives." So I ended up having to do that, and it was outstanding. It was outstanding to see the way police are trained and all the good and the bad of it. I've been writing about that stuff since the late 90s, early 2000s. Published a bunch of ethnographic and social network analyses of that police academy. I collected a bunch of data along with my mentor here in Pittsburgh. At the Pittsburgh Police Academy, we haven't done anything with that data yet. And so around 2007, I was trained in the Inside Out program. The reason was a buddy of mine who I had been on faculty with at West Virginia University, who was an ex-cop, uh, he went and got trained just because he was from Philadelphia and loved to go back, and that's where the training was. And he would tell me about he'd come back, he'd call me on the road from his classes and tell me how good they were. Had no idea what he was talking about or what this was or how it could work. I just knew that the way he would say good during the conversation had so much gravity to it that I knew there must be something to it. So I went out and got trained. And while I was there, and we're sitting in circles and talking about our feelings and complicated things, and then working with the guys in prison, I'm like, this is the exact opposite of the police academy. And that didn't click in for a while, that maybe this should be part of it. Probably took a year, 2 years for me to actually think this should be part of the police academy. So then I spent 7 years trying to get funding, to get permission, to get people to do this. And I wasted a lot of time with the Department of Justice writing up proposals, and they would read them and send them to the reviewers. And the reviewers said, "This is a great idea. It'll never happen, though." And so we eventually had to say, well, we're going to do it without them. In the interim, we were teaching a lot of courses at the Allegheny County Jail. There was a semester when there was a political change, so the county executive there was a new county executive, and no one wanted to be responsible for having a bunch of Duquesne kids in the county jail with me as an Inside Out class. For those of you that don't know, Inside Out is a program where you take traditional university students into a prison and meet there for 2-3 hours a week and have a normal class with them. Not normal, but a legitimate college class with them. So when we got kicked out of the county jail, we had to quickly jump into SCI Pittsburgh, which was the only urban prison in the state of Pennsylvania at the time. Now there are none. So we went in there and I brought 20 undergraduates, and I'm sitting in this room with 10 or 15 men in prison, most of them serving life sentences. And it was really amazing. And my class was Introduction to Criminal Justice. We had a basic philosophical questions course and a survey of sociology course. So two in the fall, one in the spring. That summer, I believe it was, I came back in, or the next summer, I'm not sure. I came back in and said, I'd like to form a think tank here. And that's something you do after the course is over. You take alumni from the course who want to continue the work. And I'd like to form a think tank here with the uh, explicit goal of developing this program I want to call Police Training Inside Out. So of the 15 guys in the room, maybe, or 10 or whatever it was, how many guys were in the room? About half of them walked out, and we were left with about 6. And those guys had tremendous character because they believed in this program and had to take a lot of pressure suffer a lot of insults from the men they were incarcerated with. So we worked on that from about 2013 until 2016. I found out after we made the program work that none of the guys believed it would ever work, except for maybe 1 or 2 of them. And there were other folks that were coming from the outside, and I was like, "What? Why did you come here every Friday morning at 8:30 if you didn't think this was? What's wrong with you? Am I the king of the island of misfit toys? What's going on, right?" So we had approval from probably 3 different chiefs in Pittsburgh. The chief position was being refilled a lot at the time. So in the fall of 2016, they sent out a memo to the entire department, maybe 900 officers, and maybe 10 expressed interest. And we started off with 6 that signed up for the course. So we had the 6 guys from the original think tank, right? We had 6 cops out of 900 who want to do this. And this is an important sort of don't try this at home moment, because as we're moving forward and people are hearing more and more about the people want to try, but because it's going well, it's a great program, this and that, but it didn't just go well. There was a lot that made it go well. The idea that you started with these 6 guys in prison who spent a lot of time to build this program, so they had a vested interest. You started with a very small portion, self-selected, and then administratively selected group of officers and detectives and whatever who signed up for the course. So we did the first course. It was a whole semester, sort of operating from maybe like October through February. So it wasn't the traditional fall semester or spring semester. And we have here 2 of the very courageous officers who were in that program. I'll let them tell you who they are and their experiences with the program, and then I'll come back and tell you where we are with it now, and we'll see if folks have questions.
Hi, I'm Colleen. When the program was afforded to us, I was just become a sergeant with Pittsburgh Police about a year prior to that. And then I was pregnant, actually. My husband was really excited for me to go into the prison during my pregnancy, and I was moved to the training academy. So it was almost very cosmic how things happened with the placement of everything, all the pieces falling in. But I just wrote like a short thing for you guys, just from my own personal experience, kind of with police training and regular police training and police training inside out. And then I also brought we have all of the recruits write a reflection. I don't know if you want me to end with that, Norm, want the
Sure.
recruits reflection. All right, okay, so I'll just speak on myself right now. Like I said, again, I'm just speaking strictly from my experience with Pittsburgh's training. It doesn't represent the training around the country. So our police training rarely addressed the human being on the other side of the interaction. Pejorative language pervaded my training. Using terms such as bad guy and junkie was common speak. Another issue that I observed is there's no diversity of thought in police training. Questioning the training and opinions we were provided was highly disfavored. All of our training had a strong fear-based, safety-aware aspect to it. Recruits were inundated with videos and stories highlighting the most recent officer being hurt in various ways. Daily, we passed a bulletin board that had the latest fatality in America from the Officer Down Memorial page. Every day, we also passed a historical Pittsburgh police fatality board. All of this really contributed to us coming out with an us first them mentality along with some other things. And I feel like that's very pervasive in policing. So fast forward to 2016, like Norm said, we were afforded to take this class with inmates behind this fortress looking of a state prison in Pittsburgh. It really looks just like a fortress. I addressed my own difficult biases and hopefully helped others shed theirs. The time spent learning and sharing with the inside guys opened my eyes. I made personal connections on a deep level that were entrenched in commonality. I ended this class with a better understanding of what it feels like to be on the other side of a police interaction, what causes the behaviors we commonly see in citizens we encounter, and how our enforcements will affect people's lives indefinitely. And I can't stress that more than that point right there. At the end of our time, we decided as a group that all new recruits should experience this. So we got the work, shortened it, made an appropriate version for recruits. And luckily, Chief Schubert was extremely supportive and allowed all of us the liberty to just run with it. So the training now helps the newest officers to do the same it did for me. It addresses their biases, stops the us first them mentality, and it helps them to be cognizant of the human element of the decisions that they make of an officer. There's a quote that once your eyes are open, you can't unsee what you've saw. My eyes were open to the human effect of incarceration and some of the good intentioned harms that I may have created during my career. And I knew that all officers needed to experience that from the beginning, and they need to circle back to it within their career.
How you doing? My name's Sergeant Tim Nova. So I'm also at the training academy. Me and Sergeant Bristol basically got promoted similar time. She was a little ahead of me, and we went to the academy together. So we came and did this together as friends. And basically, what I'm going to go over is my reflection when I completed the course. I volunteered to be involved in the Inside Out program at SEI Pittsburgh. This course was instructed by Dr. Norm Conti from Duquesne University. When I signed up for this course, I had many hesitations due to current culture around policing nationwide. When I arrived for the first day, I was extremely nervous and thought to myself, what did I get myself into? I was totally taken out of my comfort zone. I was in a jail with inmates all around me, which was extremely intimidating. Everyone was dressed the same, and I was a complete outsider. I looked at Dr. Conti, who I met the week before, and thought, how can he be so comfortable? We are in here with the worst people in society. After we checked in and met all the inmates, we sat in a circle and started making simple conversation. Within minutes, I felt comfortable. I realized there was no hate in the room and no bias by anyone. We discussed many topics for several hours, which seemed just like minutes. As we were talking, I thought that it would eventually get uncomfortable due to myself being a police officer and them inmates. To my surprise, it never did. It was actually the complete opposite. We became closer, and we really had stimulating conversation with many different opinions and views. I could not believe the intellect and the reasonableness the inmates possessed. I never felt that we were on completely different sides of the fence like I do with some groups on the outside. I really felt respect from the inmates, even though a person probably dressed like me put them in jail. The amazing part was they gave me a chance, and I gave them one as well. With this experience, I learned several things about myself and others. I learned that I did have a bias towards people. I did not know these inmates, but I believed that they would hate me and blame me due to their circumstances. I learned that when people interact and give each other a chance without letting bias, people can interact and communicate. I believe certain things about inmates as a whole due to the media exposure. It was very enjoyable to have conversations with inmates who I previously thought were complete opposites. I was quickly proven wrong about them being completely opposites. We had so much in common, particularly our views on society and life in general. We reflected on the way younger generations need to be molded, just as I do with my fellow police officers. We had so many opinions on how society is getting worse and less social with the prevalence of social media. I also learned that I can help others from these mistakes. My job as a police officer gave me the opportunity to meet people who are incarcerated. It gave me a chance to look at the after effects of arrest and prosecution. I know now that I can relate these experiences to deter people from making bad decisions. In the future, I hope to one day somehow make a good decision rather than respond to a man shot call. These men's lives were changed in minutes. If I can pass it along or help someone, I would truly be protecting and serving. This program helped me understand a different world as an officer. It helped me understand that the minds of an incarcerated person. The program also helped me realize there's a tremendous loss when someone is incarcerated. Whether the loss is the loss of a family or individual, incarceration breaks down the whole community. Our job now is to use these failed life choices made by these inmates to ensure it does not happen again. So that's basically my reflection when I went. And um, like I said, the funny thing, and Norm will tell you, we became friends. Like, me and some of the inmates would gang up on Sergeant Bristow, and it would be a joke, and it would be, funny. And they were on my side. Sometimes they were on her side, and we'd have heated arguments. But we dropped all the uniforms, all their uniforms, and it was like we had certain relations with people, how we interacted and became like friends. It was really funny how it went and how the dynamic of just human nature after a while just came in and played a role rather than what we were, how we looked, or anything like that. It was the power of conversation. For me.
One thing that I could tell Tim was very nervous the first few times when we went, so I would put my arm around him and keep him safe until eventually I just hold his hand to make him feel more comfortable. And eventually he could walk through like a big boy. It was really really great to see him change. Tiffany.
Sorry I was late. I had the wrong link, but I found my way here. And thank you for admitting me to the panelists as opposed to the audience. Could you let me know what am I talking about? What was the prompt?
Just your experience in the program.
Okay. So I've known about Inside Out for a really long time, thanks to NPR, and I've always wanted to be a part of it. I thought it was pretty fascinating, but I was kind of done with my college time and career. So I thought it maybe was like a boat that I missed. And then this opportunity appeared to join Norm Conti and be part of this first time ever Police Inside Out program. At the State Correctional Institute, which I happen to live right next to a couple blocks away. So it was pretty fascinating to get to go inside this space that's like an institution and to see what it really was like in there, which part of our experience was a tour. Which kind of blew my mind because I'd been to Alcatraz on a tour and it was so similar. And the whole time you're at Alcatraz, they're talking about how inhumane it is and was, and how this space could never be used for a prison setting. And then right down the road from my house is a version of Alcatraz, now shut down. But it kind of blew my mind. The first time I walked in, it smelled like onions and it looked like a concentration camp. And it just, I remember walking in with Colleen side by side and we were just kind of both floored. But, I caught the tail end of Colleen's statement and Tim's statement. I heard the entirety. I think the thing that really sticks with me is the humanity, the focus on humanity. Like Tim said, the first meeting, we kind of just paired up and talked, and then we would switch and have a conversation with a different person. And all the things that we had in common as human beings really hit home. And Norm talked a lot about how both police and those persons incarcerated both wear uniform. They're both seen as a them in an us versus them situation. And so there was this commonality from the beginning. And to this day, one of the guys, especially who was released after 46 years recently, is a very close friend of mine and somebody that I stay in contact with weekly. So it was a space not only to get in touch with like this idea of human beings, no matter what their environment, but also a space to make a really good friend long term. That was my experience.
That's really cool. Thank you, all three of you. One of the things I used to do to make fun of recruits, I think that I take very much more seriously now, uh, the first time we did a recruit class in the prison in that prison, right? So on the day of our graduation or the day before, they announced they were closing that facility. So it's like, oh my God, we just did, and now it's then what, right? So Colleen and Tim were great about getting a recruit class in before it closed, and we were talking about this, the othering and the biases and all these things that have only exploded 10 times more since then. Uh, and the recruits were talking about how difficult it is to be a police officer, and they were making these points like, police. Some people are biased against the police. And I said, yes. They go in because of our uniforms, we stand out from other people. Yes, I understand. And they only show us in the media or on TV when we do bad things. Uh huh. Then I said, so who is in a similar situation, right? And a recruit raises a hand and says, politicians? Yeah, I'm sure politicians. Who? Movies, actors, celebrity? Yes, yes. And someone says black people. Right. That's what we were actually going for. But and that's sort of me being a smartass. But it did happen. But now it's like things have flipped so much that I feel like I know what they mean, and I mean I knew what they meant at the time, right? But the anti-police sentiment is so huge right now, and obviously you can always quit, you can do a different job or whatever, but it's it's an othering and it's an us versus them that is, I think, destructive. So that's one of the main things that the guys in prison get out of this, right? They call everyone cops, right? The correctional officers are cops, right? The police are cops. This person's okay, but I understand that they see it that way, but that's not officially a police officer is not a correctional officer or a probation officer or whatever, parole officer. So when they can start to see police and understand how much like them they are, because this was one of the hard sells. They think police are the enemy. They think police, they know every bad thing that the police do because they've seen it up close in a way that normal civilians don't, normal citizens don't. So when I go in there and say, guys, look, you're just like police. Police and you are so much in sync. It's like the culture of street crime and policing attract a lot of the same people with the same kind of personality traits, and it's aggressive and everything else. So, and then when even if that didn't work, I'd have to say, well, in the end, there are going to be police. Do you want to have an effect on the police while they're out there patrolling the neighborhoods where your families are, or do you not want to? So they were willing to get past this thing. Whereas the police actually were, from the chief of police on down, were always way more open. It was an easier sell to the police than it was to the guys in prison. And so we did a class, one class in SCI Pittsburgh. It was great with the recruits. We were invited to do it an hour south of Pittsburgh. We've been doing it there for a number of times. The first time we did it there, it was hard to get the incarcerated men at the facility to want to participate. By the second time, there was a line around the block, right, to do it. So since COVID, we had a class end right as COVID was starting. That worked out. So since COVID, we did one version online. We used a police academy class, and we used returning citizens from around the country. That ended up being very powerful. I'll let Colleen talk about that if she wants to. And another thing we've been doing is what I call police training inside out phase 2. What my co-facilitators call social living, or the social living collective. We got the actor Roger Genver Smith. He played like Smiley and Do the Right Thing, and he's been in more Spike Lee movies than anyone, and has a really great scene with Denzel Washington and Malcolm X. He has a couple sort of one-man shows. One's called A Huey P. Newton Story, and one's called Rodney King. And I saw Rodney King, and it really affected me because, as I said, that's sort of what led me down this path. And I was able to meet him through a friend of a friend, and so I said, here's what we'd like to do. Oh, actually, Colleen, we all talked to him. Tiffany talked to him, and we told him we show Rodney King in the police academy, and his. It turned out we didn't know this, but one of his best friends from his whole life was a New York City cop. They met when they were 17, and maybe a study abroad thing in England. So we've brought police, returning citizens, a young man who was shot by the police and paralyzed, all together, and we have a writing workshop, really a writing and performance workshop every Friday, and it's based on Roger's course he offers through Phi Beta Kappa called Performing History and Autobiography and Process. So it's been really fascinating to see, and we're hopeful to get a third phase of this. We're hopeful to create a micro badge. That's the new popular thing in academics. We can sell you college or graduate school in 3 credit bites. And we're trying to mold our new master's degree in applied and public sociology to fit more and more police officers in the idea that this is a dynamic moment for policing and police change. So we're hopeful that we can be a part of something positive that will lead to something better. Colleen, if you want to talk about the thing I mentioned.
No, the one thing we did find out, because the recruits all write a reflection at the end of their time there, and there was like a little piece that was missing to this, and that was actually the people who have been released from prison and are out there, just being restored to normal, so the pandemic afforded the opportunities for us. Now, we actually did have incarcerated men. We had to use New Orleans men because of Pennsylvania DOC would not allow any form of technology in. And we had men and women this time too, which was different. We had never had women. So this was like a really well-rounded opportunity of sharing on like where they could really hear what happens once you're released, the barriers that are facing you and the constant hurdles that you have to overcome just to, restore your life to a semblance of normalcy. So that was really something that we benefited from, trying to find the silver lining in the pandemic. And then there's a question
Yeah, how many? I'm not going to type it because how many sessions are involved in the program and over what time period? How do you measure the outcomes of the program? The first time we did a full semester course. The second time we did 4 or 5. I can't remember. Lately, we've been doing 4 or 3. You have to be very fluid with this because the academy has the scheduling is not easy. They have so much they have to work in, and so we're flexible. We could do it. If someone else wanted to do it, it could be 15 weeks. You could do it. I don't think once would be enough, but I think a minimum of 3. But maybe 3, 5, 10, however you want to look at it. And over what time period? Well, how many weeks is the academy? How many months is the academy?
8.
So
8 months.
It's 8 months. So we probably do it in the last 2 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I would recommend if you're going to use an outside moderator like we do, I would recommend we have them come in first and introduce themselves to the class, explain what the class is going to be, because the recruits are going to be nervous. Now we have where recruits are already hearing about it and may, have this opinion on it before they're even leaving here. So it's really important for them to form a relationship with the moderator of the class. And then I would say probably at least 4 sessions, because you really want them to be able to, they get comfortable within the first session more than you would think, but to really be able to have some of those really hard conversations without it feel like both sides feeling so attacked, you kind of need at least, I would say, 4 sessions. And then we've used Qualtrics surveys to measure outcomes. I don't know if you have anything, Dr. Conti, you want to report on that?
Yeah, we're still early in the evaluation process. We're getting there. Not to throw shade on other criminologists, but I've always wanted to use that expression, so this was my chance. Not to throw shade on other criminologists, but a lot of people come up with these ideas and then go out and test them themselves. And amazingly, they're great ideas and they work perfect. Well, so it's important to me that I don't evaluate this and I bring other people in to do it. So that's made it take a little bit longer. But I think our results are going to be better. And uh, Colleen can also tell you, with this online session, we did 3, and after the second one, the recruits were feeling, I don't know, how would you describe how they were feeling, Colleen?
Attacked.
Attacked. There you go. They were feeling
That's
attacked,
the truth.
and they didn't even want to come to the third session. And she tells me this the night before, because police. Uh, I'm just kidding. So I was able to talk to, Farouk, who the man that Tiffany was talking about, Robert Weidman, you might know him from the book Brothers and Keepers, Farouk to his friends. And I was able to talk to the chief of police where I live in Mount Lebanon, which is like an affluent suburb. He was in the class too, just he wanted to see what it was like. And that night, just with a couple phone calls and thinking about it, we were able to formulate a way to go in there. And Farouk is very good with people. He has great experience from AA or NA or whatever he does, those kind of meetings. He knows how to get people in the right direction. So it ended up, I thought, being one of the best. And it's funny because I this is such a high wire act, this class, and I can't express that enough. And I have fallen, and when you're on your way down off the high wire, the guy cleaning up behind the elephants looks like a pretty good job. Uh, but I would say things, I don't want to get into it, but that would turn all the recruits against me. I would have never thought they would. So it's such a learning experience, and you're like, I've been police culture for 20 some years. And it's like, you really don't. So it's the best kind of learning because everyone's learning, and it's fascinating. And to see the stuff like when Tim and Colleen, Tiffany talked about how everything melted away, all the bullshit, right, that we carry into prison or throughout our lives. It was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So Norma, I had one thing to bring up that might be pretty important is when we did this program, how when we started, we were in small groups and we got to know people and doing the recruits. At first, we were switching groups all the time, and it wasn't they didn't get into that interpersonal experience as much as staying with that person. Then that's when the human nature actually comes in. You get to know the person,
Yep.
you get to joke with them, you get to know their tendencies.
So this Tim's pointing out that we're still very much learning as we go. You could say, well, it's been 5 years or something. Yeah, but it's something that's never been done before. So Tim and Colleen pointed out, Norm, we bring in 30 recruits, maybe you have 30 incarcerated men. It would make more sense to have, groups of 5 or 10 that are this meet this. Because when we break out into small groups, if you have the same people in the same groups every week in these small groups, they're actually replicating the 6 and 6 dynamic of the first time we did it in the prison, and then they get to know each other better, and it'll be more human. And I would have never thought of that. And it's there's this idea of there's the knowledge that I bring to this from inside out and academic, and then there's the knowledge that officers and training officers bring, the situated knowledge of having done this work and knowing things that I would never think of. So it's a tremendous collaboration. I really wish Farouk was here, but he started a new job. He could tell you the other side of this. But man's got to earn a living. He has an apartment in Monroeville now.
So there's a question in the chat about conveying this to our peers. I'm from my perspective, this still isn't like the easiest sell at work, even though we've been doing it for a really long time. And of course, from the murder of George Floyd last year, it's become even harder to do this, but it's the right thing to do. And, internally, we have to have the same hard conversations that we have within there. And, we have to also open eyes. So another thing we've done during this time is we've elicited, maybe like some of the cooler kids, for lack of better words, within the department, someone that has the respect of their peers to come in and do the program with us. And then they could go back, as the informal leader to we call them zones in Pittsburgh, to their zone and, say, hey, this was actually, all right, this isn't, this is common term we heard was like, this is hug a thug training and things like that. And it's very much not that at all. It's every single time we've been in the prison, there's been an officer involved shooting, or there's been a crazy incident in America. And it's allowed this space where both sides can actually it's been healing. Both sides could express their hurt, both sides could actually explain to the other side, well, this is actually, maybe why it happened. That, we talk about use of force a lot. That's what Sergeant Novosels's specialty is use of force. So those hard conversations that are really not, like, a lot of officers don't even really understand use of force matrices and the continuum of force. So it's really important. Those are the really important conversations that we have to be having, and they're hard conversations and they're awkward. And like I said, the environment around outside the media has really given us a lot to kind of come in and debrief together as a group, which has been really amazing, but hard. Believe me, I've left there with my blood pressure high, stressed out, but you come home and you actually feel healed from it. It's been really amazing for that aspect as well.
One thing that Colleen made me think of is we ripped off the National Holocaust Museum and Memorial, their law enforcement and society lessons from the Holocaust curriculum, and we do a little version of that. There's a Pittsburgh Holocaust Center. We take the recruits there. So it was like maybe on a Tuesday we did that training. On Friday we went into the prison for a police training inside out. We had a huge blowout about all the stuff you'd expect to have a blowout about. That was Friday. Saturday was the Tree of Life shooting, right? The worst anti-Semitic hate crime in America. And we didn't go back for a couple of weeks, not because of that, but just because it was the way the schedule worked. And the incarcerated men who had been through the program were so concerned about the well-being of their cops, right? Whether it was the recruits who wouldn't have been involved, or was it the older recruits who they met a long time ago and are now cops, right? So it's such a fascinating thing. And then to go back, that when we did go back and see the, go from this hot contentious thing, a couple of weeks later, it's like a family reunion almost.
And they're just to expand on it, there was one of the inside guys that said he actually cried. He said, I shed tears because I thought one of you were hurt. And he's like, I just needed to see you guys again to know you were safe. Now it's like, even still now, when Norm just told the story, I get goosebumps, because how profound is that these adversarial, traditional two entities, and one's shedding tears over the safety of the other one. It was really amazing. And I know it made the recruits, like, that kind of solidified it for them as well. Like, wow, this is really changing perspectives here.
And when you talk about this kind of work to funding agencies or to other law enforcement agencies, they always want to know about your metrics. How do you know it works, right? And it's like, the way this, if this works, it buys a few seconds, right? Because we're talking about people with guns, right? Whether it's the police or the guys, right? And if this buys a few seconds on each side of an interaction someday, and someone doesn't have to get killed, that will be our greatest success. And there'll be no record of it, right? There'll be no metric for that. So as I said, we're working to find other people that will say this is wonderful, so we don't have to do it ourselves. At the same time, it's a tricky thing.
I think that's the nature of any kind of engagement work, though, Norm. You're putting positive deposits in the bank, and you may not ever see a quantitative analysis of that, but rest assured, it's helping. Another, to answer the question from Marcus, another way that personally I work to break down the negative ideas of this program is any opportunity I get to introduce Farouk to other police officers, or to involve Farouk in any of our work. We do that so that other officers get to see what an amazing person he is, to further.
Yeah. And it's really different, because when you have guys who have done significant time and have looked at how they got to where they are, they understand it. There is a system in place that led them there, but they made choices, right? And the two senior members of our original group were men with serious drug problems in their youth, right? And that's really what ended them up in prison. So they understand that, and they don't want to see, if you're a man in prison with a life sentence and you feel like you can stop other people from having to end up in your situation, that's a big win. And that's something, that's one of the best things you can live for in that situation.
And I think with the think tank that meets on every Friday, I don't know if you talked about that at all, but like the dedication of these guys, whether they're still inside or whether they are working on reentry, their dedication to public safety and making an impact in a positive way on their communities is heartfelt. They especially Farouk, like all those years inside, all he wanted to do was get out and make amends for the harm he had done, and now he gets an opportunity to do that.
There's a powerful thing that happens to the quote unquote normal people. Uh, it's like when I used to live near this running trail, and when I'd run, I'd see this guy in a racing wheelchair, and then when I didn't go, I think that guy in the racing wheelchair is probably there, and I'm not, right? So it's like it's harder for him just to get there than it is for me to do all this, and he's there. What excuse? So it's like when you meet, I met a guy named Jim or James from the north side of Pittsburgh when I was getting my training, and he said, "I was so happy to meet you. I'm so happy I knew you were coming because I want to get transferred closer to home someday and get involved in some activism." Like, this is a juvenile lifer, right? At the time, there was no reason to believe he'd ever get out of prison, and for something he did or didn't do or was there when he was a kid, and he wanted to be an activist. You know, I don't even want to recycle, right? And this guy wants he wants to do all this. So it's like when you meet these guys, one of the things that changes you is what excuse do I have not to do more or do better or whatever?
Norm, I have something for that, Marcus, too. When I talk to everyone, especially with police, it's important to not forget you have to talk police talk. So when we talk that way, you know, we emphasize on tactics, use of force, the way we do things. But then when I introduce this Inside Out program, that's a form of de-escalation. We're learning how different people react and how they are. So it's an advantage to us to know how different people think. So when we have that, you can kind of get away with the police a little bit. Like it's another tool that we can have when we go out in policing, because we understand different people and how to talk to them rather than just being totally blind. Because as a police academy, you never know what kind of life experiences people have. We get people that are 21 to 25 years old, not many life experiences. So when they get to go to an environment like that, they learn a whole different realm of things that they can now take out to their policing abilities, how to talk to people, why people commit crimes. You know, you hear that stories. So that actually helps them when they go out and get in a really tense situation. So
There's an attempt to make a documentary about this program as well, so you may see it on a major platform at some point, hopefully.
But I just, Marcus, you asked about the family and friends of the inside guys, and I'm just using guys because that's all we do with the inside people right now because of the way the prisons are set up. They come back and they actually tell us, like, I was talking to my girlfriend about you, or I was talking to my mom about you, and like sometimes they're saying, well, my cousin was like, I can't believe you're talking to the effing cops. You know what I mean? But they're like, no, they're not like you think they are. Like they're actually like this person's, mom was engaged in this, criminality or something. And they're like, no, no way. So like it does spread outside of those walls where they're, and the first time we did it, we had a ceremony where I brought my parents. The inside guys had, their wives, their children, their parents maybe, and we all, we had cookies together and we spent time together. My dad's there inside, my dad's pretty old, inside the prison talking to people, and it was just like, wow, this is really awesome that we got to bring our families together. But for time's sake, that just didn't translate into the recruit level training, because just like everything else, they want officers' bodies out on the street as fast as possible. So we definitely had to be really thoughtful about how we spent our time in there and cut some things out. So we don't formally include family and friends anymore, but like I said, the effects of it still 100% reach it. I talk to my friends about it, share stories, and even a lot of my non-police friends actually have a really stigmatized view of things, and I feel like I've really changed their perspectives on it as well. So it definitely it spreads out side
And
of the walls.
additionally, Tim ate so many cookies that the administration refused to ever provide them for us again. It was shameful.
Thanks, Norm.
He didn't even have one.
It was a Friday. If it was Sunday, I would have had one.
Okay, well, we'll try to remember that if we. So we're almost out of time. If we have 2 minutes left, I believe. If there's anyone else that wants to say anything.
I wanted to read you guys one of the recruits writer reflections. Like we said before, we don't really, we do Qualtrics surveys, pre, post, and then further into their career again. The data still really raw and not been interpreted, but informal conversations has been a lot what we've ran on because they're so much more meaningful. And then the reflections also where the recruits are able to have a voice and improve it. That way, again, when they put it outside to their peers, they feel like they were a part of the process. So we could that's a lot of the way that we analyze it. I know a lot of people hate to hear that, but it's the truth and it's been meaningful and it's made the program become really great. So I just wanted to read you guys recruits reflection. When I first saw the Inside Out class on the schedule, I thought, ooh, I'm going to hear some war stories from the past and present inmates. A naive thought, but I've only seen shows on TV such as Scared Straight, Behind Bars. Then I saw our host, Norm, and couldn't help but view him as some kind of Caucasian samurai man. I really was unsure what we were going to get into. After the first lecture, I was extremely surprised at the depths of conversations we dove into. I had the wrong impression of the class as a whole, and I'm happy to have been caught off guard. The program has been immensely beneficial to me to speak with and listen to people who have endured a vastly different life than me. Recently, I was in a discussion with my friends about the Capitol building. After much back and forth arguing and debating, one of my friends chimed in and said, guys, let's stop talking about this. Nobody ever changes their opinions or thinks differently when they argue. It's useless. I immediately thought of the Inside Out program. I responded to my friends how I completely disagree. I mentioned the program and how my perspective on life, people, culture, and policing has 100% been altered since our talks. Speaking with some of the inside guys and many others in this setting helped me confront some of my own biases and inner questions I haven't had the platform to work on before. 2 other friends spoke up and agreed with me, further saying how constructive communication is what our society is lacking, thus the reason for such a divide in America. It's been said many times during our 3 sessions, but we really need more talks like this. I'll never forget these discussions, and I know that as a future officer, I will reflect on the conversations we've had here. Perhaps when interacting with the public, maybe in the courtroom, maybe in a decision whether to put the handcuffs on a person or not, who knows? All I can say is that I appreciate this and the citizens for having the courage to speak with the people who put them behind bars. I know it will be beneficial, even if we are only 50 people in a world of millions. Every little bit helps and chips away at the bigger problem. My eyes have been opened and I am forever grateful.
That's amazing. And as your Caucasian samurai, let me say arigato and thank you for joining us.